open, my friends. All right, here we are on a Tuesday night. And you know what it is? It is waiver wire Tuesday, Wednesday. That's what we talk about. And we're going to talk a lot about it tonight. We're going to talk about injuries. We're going to talk about waiver wires. We're going to talk to our friends Jesse Morse, the fantasy doctor. And we're going to talk to Jason Braddock, our NFL insider. And we're going to break it down together. Okay? And we're here at the Bettor Sports Network. And we love this place. Why? Because you chime in, you ask your questions, I give you the answers. We talk, we chat. You don't have to wait. You come right in. And we start talking. All right. So a friend of mine, we know him better as Replay Reel. And he had a great comment tonight. And I said I was going to lead with this. And he writes, it's getting crunch time with valuable running back backups. Holding on to them is a must. We are almost there with Dillon, Rachaad White, Herbert, Pollard, Hunt. It's so hard, though. Fantasy managers looking to trade with me to give them that. They're not even being played on your team, right? So let's talk about that for a second. Let's say I have Khalil Herbert, okay? And this happened in one of my leagues. And one of the guys in my leagues asked me for him. Do I play Khalil Herbert? No, not normally, not unless David Montgomery's out. I play Austin Eckler and I play Dalvin Cook. Those are my two starters. Am I going to give away Khalil Herbert? Not a chance. Not a chance. Because I can't find somebody like Khalil Herbert on the waiver wire. Because here's what Khalil Herbert is. He is an insurance policy. David Montgomery sprains his pinky toe. I've got the starting running back for the Chicago Bears. Look at the names that Replay Rule mentioned here. A.J. Dillon. The guy has been poo all season. Poo. But if Aaron Jones should get hurt this weekend, would you not want A.J. Dillon? Would he not go for $800 fab dollars? Would he not be the number one guy on everybody's waiver wire? He absolutely would be. What about Rachaad White? Same thing. What if Leonard Fournette gets traded? Tampa Bay don't look like it's going anywhere. What about Kareem Hunt? What if they say, hey, we have Dearness Johnson. Why do we need Kareem Hunt? He doesn't even want to be here anyway. You don't want to move these guys because they are so valuable. So valuable. Now, if somebody is going to overpay me, that's different. Now, the same guy who wanted Khalil Herbert, he gave me a really good trade offer. It was a very, very fair trade offer. One I probably should have taken. It was fair. Chose not to. Why? Because I know how hard it is to find running backs. It's almost impossible to find running backs. And running backs, as we see, they can make a big difference. Big difference. The Tyler Algiers of the world, the Kyron Williamses of the world, the James Robinsons of the world. Problem is, in the NFL, I love Breece Hall, but all it took was one play, and all of a sudden we don't see Breece Hall for another year. Pains me to say that because Breece Hall was my roto child this year. And how good was he looking? His name wasn't Breece Hall, it was Beast Hall. That's how good he was. But we can't predict injuries in the NFL. What we can say is it seems like more often than not, it's the running backs who get more injured than the receivers. And it's the running backs who disappoint us more than the receivers. And so that's why when you have a running back of quality, even if he's not playing on your team, doesn't mean you should move him. It doesn't mean you should move him. So Spy07 says, hey, what's up, Spy? Good to see you. Better Boss says, too bad the Michael Carter people who thought they had something didn't when James Robinson was brought in. Now, that actually surprised me, but I will give you a couple of names. And I might as well give you the names now because I'll probably forget them later. My old age, right? Firstly, why does Jacksonville do this deal? Why does Jacksonville just give up James Robinson? Multitude of reasons. One, Travis Etienne is really good. We've talked about that. People doubted Travis Etienne the first couple of weeks. It was a James Robinson love fest. Well, who do we love now? Travis Etienne. Secondly, don't forget Snoop Connor. Don't forget Snoop. Snoop was pretty good at Ole Miss. He's still there. He's got skills. And finally, let's not forget JaMychal Hasty. JaMychal Hasty is not a guy that you can give 20 touches to, but he's certainly a guy that you can bring out of the backfield on a third down. He's a similar kind of build to a Travis Etienne. Maybe he's not as fast, maybe he's not as strong, but it's similar kind of build. Can the Jaguars win with those three guys? Yeah, they can. It's not like James Robinson was an earth-shattering. He was pretty good the first couple of weeks, but he's kind of tailed off. But the Jets are so desperate at this point that they need him. I mean, you're going to win with Ty Johnson? Now, I like Michael Carter. Michael Carter is solid, but you need more than Michael Carter. You do. And James Robinson was a really good get by Joe Douglas because, look, the Jets are close. They're close to being respectable. And when you're close to being respectable, you've got to go get a player like a Robinson. You give up a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, and you put him on your roster to show the team we're in this. We're trying. We want to make the playoffs. It's important to us. We're not packing it in because James Robinson still has some talent. Some talent. All right. Jalen asks, would you drop Matthew Stafford if I could pick up Geno Smith? No, I wouldn't drop Matthew Stafford, but I try to have them both on my roster if I could. And I want to talk about Geno Smith for a second. What's interesting about Geno Smith this year, he has not gotten to where he has been success-wise this year in bulk. He's not throwing 44 times a game. He's not going 32 for 45 for 300 yards. Guy barely throws more than 30 times. The guy barely throws more than 30 times. What he has been doing is he's been efficient and he's been throwing the ball down the field. So maybe he's going 20 for 27 for 210 yards. That means he's throwing the ball down the field. He's not nickel and diming it. He's not going 2 yards here, 2 yards there. He's throwing the ball down the field. When you have Tyler Lockett, when you have DK Metcalf, when you have Marquise Goodwin, when you have D. Eskridge, you have guys with speed that you could take chances down the field. And it's been paying off. It's been paying off big time. So I'm very happy to see that. I'm excited to see that. So let's talk some waiver wire. Okay. Let's kick it off with some quarterbacks. And the first guy here on my list, Daniel Jones. Can you believe Daniel Jones is on the list of waiver wire quarterbacks? But I saw something last week that I haven't seen. I saw him being pretty efficient throwing the football. We know he can run, but he threw it pretty well. Now, I think the Giants know that Daniel Jones is still a weakness. It's not a strength. But at this point, you're not losing games because of Daniel Jones. In fact, you might argue they're winning games because of Daniel Jones. He's keeping them in games. So when you have Daniel Jones being efficient, you have Saquon Barkley being number one, right? The number one running back. You have a Wan'Dale Robinson. Well, you're starting somewhere. Daniel Jones is using the brain cells. He's running Brian Dable's offense. He's figuring it out. They're putting him in the best chances of success to succeed. The best chance to succeed. So that's what we want to see. That's what we're happy about with Daniel Jones. So we can play Daniel Jones, and the schedule gets pretty easy over the next few weeks. He's got Seattle, I believe he's got Detroit, he's got Houston. These are winnable games. I mean, could you imagine the Giants going and winning another 3 games? I don't think people thought the Giants were going to win 5 games all year. I know I was debating that. I think Joe Shane wasn't sure that was going to happen. Joe Shane was thinking, well, let's wait till next year. Let's build it up a little bit. Let's get a little better. Well, they got a lot better. Got a lot better. Let's stay in New York for a second. I think Zach Wilson is make it or break it. So I had a listener say, hey, Doc, weren't the Jets better off with Joe Flacco? The answer to that question is yes and no. Yes, here's why. Flacco is a better passer. He's more pro ready. He's won at the NFL level. He's won at the highest parts of the NFL. Super Bowl champion. Garrett Wilson was better with Joe Flacco. The only guy who's better with Zach Wilson is Braxton Berrios. Now, that being said, you have to play Zach Wilson because you have to see what you have. You have to see what he's capable of. You have to see if this is a guy that you want to build around. It's only year two. Can't give up on him now. Can't be playing Joe Flacco, who's 1 foot out to the retirement home. Now, I know Flacco played well. I know he did. We watched that, but we can't trust that. So if you're the Jets, you have to put out Zach Wilson. Now, the hope is Brees Hall being there. They didn't have to pass the ball much because Hall was such a weapon. You'd run it to Hall, you run it to Carter, you'd make Wilson not lose the game for you. But now that Hall's not there, do they have to open the offense up? Worth investigating. How about Davis Mills? Davis Mills looked much better last week than he had in the first few weeks. Much better. Connected, I believe, 2 touchdowns. It was some bad penalties. If you remember, it was like a 4th down penalty that the Texans gave up, and Derek Carr, they kept the drive alive. Then when it was the Texans, it was like 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, and then it became 4th and 7. There's just some bad penalties. Davis Mills is not the reason the Texans are losing. I think play calling, and I think the fact that the receivers just aren't good. You got Brandon Cooks, who I believe is going to get traded at some point. That's what they do with Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is that guy who ends up on so many teams. Do you remember when he was like that guy that everybody liked, and all of a sudden he's on the Rams, he's on the Patriots, he's on the Saints, he's on the Texans, he's all over the place. He's got those frequent flyer miles. But Davis Mills can ball. He does have ability. They just have to let him use it. Am I investing in Zach Wilson and Davis Mills? No, let's not go crazy. But what I am saying is you've got 2 teams on bye this week, and you've got 6 next week. Week 9 is going to be the pivotal week in fantasy this year. Pivotal. Because we know week 14 has a bunch of teams out. But week 9, 6 teams out. You got to get through these next 2 weeks because there's a good chance you have Chargers. There's a good chance you have Chiefs. And now all of a sudden, the week after that, you got 6 teams out. Well, maybe Davis Mills can get you through those 2 weeks. He had his bye. Maybe Daniel Jones can get you through those 2 weeks. Maybe Zach Wilson can. Maybe my next guy, Jameis Winston, can. I am not a believer in Big Red Andy Dalton. I'm not. Now, I know he threw for 340 yards last week. That was pretty impressive, but I'm not impressed. It's like Joe Flacco. At some point, the Saints need to bring Jameis back and say to themselves, what do we have with Jameis? Can we win with Jameis? Because this team kind of feels done. Crazy thing is, it's probably the best team in that division because the Buccaneers are even worse. And the Panthers are unwatchable. And the Falcons refuse to throw the football. Literally refuse to throw the football. They're down 21-3. They're running it. Never heard of that in my life. That's how little confidence they have in Marcus Mariota. But Jameis Winston, I believe, gives them the biggest chance to go deeper in the playoffs. He makes mistakes, but he's got some ability. Now, Andy Dalton built up a lot of those yards last week in garbage time, excessive garbage time. Let's not overrate that. Let's know that for what that is. He played well when they were down, made a lot of completions. Olave and Kamara did well in the 4th quarter. Andy Dalton's not special. I give you my last guy before we take a quick timeout. Yeah, that's right, Spy. Arthur Smith hates fantasy football. He must. By the way, I love Tyler Algier this week. We'll talk about that on Friday. Tyler Algier against Carolina. I like it. I like Donta Foreman too. Kenny Pickett. Now, I could give you Bailey Zappi, but do we know if it's Zappi or is it Mac Jones? It was Bailey Zappi in the first half and and not in the second half, but Kenny Pickett kept that team in the game. Now, there's going to be a lot of problems with Pickett. He's going to make mistakes, going to throw interceptions. going to have costly fumbles. He's going to do things that just annoy us. But you can see the upside there. You can see how he's not far away from being really good. And when you have Deontay Johnson, when you have George Pickens, who is so good, when you have Chase Claypool, when you have Pat Freiermuth, when you have Najee Harris, give this guy a little time and he might be onto something. This is the kind of guy that I'm going to be targeting next year. It's the kind of guy I want. Kind of guy I'm going to get taken like round 11, maybe round 12. And because he's on a team with a lot of weapons, he could be a pretty darn good fantasy player. But right now, when you put Pickett on your team in the waivers, it's going to look like this. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like that roller coaster. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Just got to ride it. Got to ride that wave. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to get wet. But every once in a while, you're going to ride that perfect wave with Pickett. And you're going to say, wow, this guy just went for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's special, because he is. You just got to be patient. And I know, here we are. It's week 8. We've lost all our patience, but we can't. We can't. All right. I got some running backs to get to. I got Dr. Jesse Morse to get to. I got receivers to get to. I got a lot to get to. I'm Dr. Roto. We're here at the Bettor Sports Network, and I'm back right after this.
On call with Dr. Roto. Sports Network. Front Yard Fantasy, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
There was a tweet about the refs that had me kind of cracking up the other day. It was like, we have the technology to track the ball down to a centimeter and figure out, what speed these guys are running on the field. Yet somehow we still mark the ball by
That's my favorite.
a 60-year-old dude eyeballing it, and then we run over with literal chains and measure it. It's like, you think we can probably get that figured out.
The least precise way to measure something, and then immediately following that up with a super precise way of measuring something.
Yeah, it's like we have satellite.
Like if you're a millimeter short of that chain that they bring out there, that they ran out it as best they could in a straight line. But if you first they just go here, and then they grab the chains and they run in the straightest line possible. But then if you are 1 millimeter short with that football, doesn't count. Sorry. Couldn't have been human error. You're just short.
That's exactly. And, they bring up the index card or whatever. Meanwhile, they have satellites in space tracking how fast Brandon Ayuk ran on an end around. But we can't.
And I can see that number live while he's doing it. Like I can see every player's speed on the screen live.
I love that. It's and not to mention that dude's trying to make the spot, and the player always tosses the ball right into his face. Right? He's coming over to spot it, and it's every other time the player's just here you go. Here's another thing to juggle.
On call with Dr. Roto.
If the Giants don't win another game this year, A, I'll be shocked. But B, I'll still think that they're better than they were with Joe Judge. Much better. Because I think Brian Dable's got a lot out of this team already. And I'm seeing what this team could be. See, that's the problem with owners and general managers. I see Nathaniel Hackett and I see a guy who can't get it done. I see Matt Rule and see a guy who never should have been hired. Disaster right away. Sometimes a good coordinator in the NFL is better. I don't even say sometimes. Most of the time, a good coordinator in the NFL is better than a college coach, because the NFL coordinators, they know the system. They've been there. They've played. They've been around it. For the life of me, I don't know why Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten a job yet. Deuce Staley is going to get a job. Somebody's going to hire that dude. When you've been around the game, you understand it. These college guys come, they don't know it.
Join the show with one touch of a button. It's Sports Talk 3.0 on Bettor Sports Network. On call with Dr. Roto on Bettor Sports Network.
All right, we are back. Dr. Roto here with you. By the way, you know what I like doing on Tuesdays? Besides doing my waiver wire, I always put in my first team for DraftKings. Now, I'm probably going to change this lineup 872 times before Sunday. But I like to put in that first lineup of guys who it just strikes me like this could be a good team. What I tend to do is always, like I say, I change it. But what I've been doing recently is just keeping this. I put it in for $3, $3 in a dream. And I try to see whether or not how my thinking has changed from Tuesday to about Saturday at 3 a.m. Right? Because by Saturday at 3 a.m., I'm locked in. I mean, I couldn't be more locked in if I wanted to be. But I sit there and I try to figure out exactly like who are the guys I like today. So I'm going through it. Rondell Moore, Michael Gallup, Josh Reynolds, Hunter Renfro, Claypool. Where do I want to be? Paris Campbell, but I don't know. Nobody's come shouting out to me. I do like, but I'll tell you who I have as of right now. Okay. I got Tua. I got Donta Foreman. I got Mostert. I got Brandon Cooks. I got Tyreek Hill. I'm bringing it back with Hawkinson, but I think I'm going to change that. I have a feeling I'm going to change that. And then that's all I have right now. So that's where I am. I've got a Miami stack. Because when you're playing the Detroit Lions, I want the opposing team stack. Okay. Replay rule says Jonathan Taylor. What can we get for him right now? Not as much as you're going to want. Unless you're willing to give up Jonathan Taylor for 85 cents on the dollar, you're not going to be able to get what you want for him. Now, before the season, you probably could have gotten $1.30 for your dollar. But now, 85 cents. But I want to talk about this for a second. Frank Reich said one of the best things I've ever heard a coach say. I mean, Matt Ryan got hurt. Matt Ryan is done. They're bringing in Sam Erlinger, right? And he said, we owe Matt Ryan an apology. We promised him a running game and protection. They didn't give him either. They didn't give him a running game. They didn't give him protection. If they had given Matt Ryan those two things, he could have been a decent enough quarterback this year. Not good. Dude's getting too old, but he would have been serviceable. But when you can't protect and you can't run, Matt Ryan's a sitting duck. And Erlinger, it has more mobility. Now, I watched this kid play at Texas. He's all right. Not special. Does it affect Jonathan Taylor? Yes. Should you be worried about your Pittman shares? Yes and no. And here's why. Young quarterbacks usually come in and they go to one guy. It's like Taylor Heineke going to Terry McLaurin. I've got to think that Pittman will be that guy. So you have to wait. You got to wait a week. You got to wait and see. I mean, they're playing Washington. Might as well wait. Let's see what happens. See how it shakes out. If it shakes out that Pittman goes 8 for 78, 8 for 87, 9 for 62, we'll take our 15 points. If he's going 3 for 40, I'm pressing that panic button. Pressing it. Because 3 for 40, that doesn't get me where I want to be. And by the way, I have Michael Pittman on a bunch of high stakes teams. So I am as in this as you are. Absolutely in this. By the way, a pickup I made last week won me 2 leagues, and his name is Paris Campbell. How lucky did I get? Oh, man. All right, let's get to the running backs of the week. Firstly, Gus the Bus. Gus's presence really changes Lamar Jackson because when they got to that red zone, it was a Bus Edwards love fest there. It's killing me. Lamar Jackson, in every play, he was running backwards. Dude, you got to throw forwards. It's crazy. Gus Edwards needs to be the number 1 waiver wire pickup. That's just easy. Gus is number 1. Probably should have had him a couple of weeks ago. Should have. My mistake. Michael Carter. Michael Carter will get 15 to 17 touches. James Robinson will get about 12 to 15. I think the Jets want to run the ball about 30 times a game. Got to keep the ball out of Zach Wilson's hands. You want to minimize the mistakes of Zach Wilson. Will Zach Wilson throw a little more? Yes, a little more. A lot more? No, unless he has to. Got to minimize that damage. But I do like Michael Carter. I mean, Michael Carter was a pretty good player last year. This guy's got 12 for 50 written right over him. So you're talking about 12 for 50 and like 4 for 30. So what's that? 12? There's your 12 fantasy points. If he finds the end zone, you got yourself 18. Woohoo. More than likely you're getting your 12. Take your dozen and run. Gus Edwards, not going to catch many passes, probably going to go like 20 for 80. He finds the end zone. You're talking about 14 points. Boom. That's what we're looking at. I'm still in on Kyren Williams. So people ask me, before we get to Kyren Williams, people ask me about Cam Akers. I got to assume he's going to be moved. I got to assume he's going to go somewhere for like a 7th round pick in 2028. Something ridiculous like that. I think that the Rams were more willing to do this because A, they like Kyren Williams, and B, they're tired of Cam Akers. But Kyren Williams, once again, go watch his YouTube from Notre Dame. He was good. He was good in college. I have no problem with that guy. He's a solid player. Very solid player. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Will he be better than Darrell Henderson? I think so. I don't think Darrell Henderson's that special. Give you a few more players. Donta Foreman. Love Donta Foreman. We were in a new dynasty league. He was still there late in the draft. I was shocked. Look, McCaffrey gets hurt. They brought in Donta Foreman for a reason. He's a big, strong dude, and he's surprisingly fast. Surprisingly fast. Looked pretty good for the Titans last year. I'm good with Donta Foreman. I'm not giving up my number one waiver wire pick for him, but I'm pretty good with him. I still have written down Latavius Murray, who Mike Boone is on the IR. He's Lat Murray, but solid enough. I mean, when you're desperate, you'll take Lat Murray. If you don't like peanut butter and jelly, and I don't like peanut butter, I'm being honest with you. Can't stand the smell of it. But if I was really hungry, if I haven't eaten, it's been 2 days, and you give me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I'd probably figure a way to figure it out. I'd eat around the ends. You don't like Lat Murray. You don't want a Lat Murray, but you put him out there because you have no other choice. When you're hungry, you eat. When you have no running backs, you play Lat Murray. Now, I did list JaMycal Hasty, not because he's a great player. I've mentioned this before. He's not great. But injuries happen all the time. Breece Hall Roto runs for a touchdown, and 10 plays later, he's out. I don't wish that on anybody. Travis Etienne is good in the beginning of the game, and at the end of the game, who knows? So is JaMycal Hasty somebody that I'm willing to just deal with? Yes. And by the way, thank you, Tyler. It's Ellinger. My bad. Sam Ellinger. And of course, Tyler would know it. He follows those Texas players. But JaMycal Hasty is a guy that you have to consider. There was times last year where I really liked JaMycal Hasty. I really liked JaMycal Hasty when he was with the 49ers. I picked him up. I was thinking they could give him the ball. Shanahan's pretty ingenious back there. Didn't really pan out. It could in Jacksonville, but I do like Snoop Connor. I do like Snoop. Snoop scored a lot of touchdowns for Ole Miss. Snoop is hard to take down. He's not a bad player. He's not a superstar, but he's not a bad player. All right. As we move forward in the show, we're going to be talking wide receivers. We're going to be talking tight ends. But now what I want to be talking about are injuries. Big injuries. And there's no better person to do that with than Dr. Jesse Morse from the Fantasy Doctors. We will talk to Dr. Morse when we return right after this.
On call with Dr. Roto. Front Yard Fantasy, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
There was a tweet about the refs that had me kind of cracking up the other day because somebody was like, we have the technology to track the ball down to a centimeter and figure out, what speed these guys are running on the field. Yet somehow we still mark the ball by
That's my favorite.
a 60-year-old dude eyeballing it, and then we run over with literal chains and measure it. It's like, you think we can probably
It's
get that figured
it's like
out.
the least precise way to measure something, and then immediately following that up with a super precise way of measuring something.
Yeah, it's like we have
That's what I love. Like if you're a millimeter of that chain that they bring out there, that they ran out it as best they could in a straight line. But if you first they just go here, and then they grab the chains and they run in the straightest line possible. But then if you are 1 millimeter short with that football, doesn't count. Sorry. Couldn't have been human error. You're just short.
That's exactly. And they bring up the index card or whatever. Meanwhile, they have satellites in space tracking how fast Brandon Ayuk ran on an end around. But we can't.
And I can see that number live while he's doing it. Like I can see every player's speed on the screen live.
I love that. It's and not to mention that dude's trying to make the spot, and the player always tosses the ball right into his face. Right, he's coming over to spot it, and it's every other time the player just here you go. Here's another thing to juggle.
On call with Dr. Roto.
If the Giants don't win another game this year, A, I'll be shocked. But B, I'll still think that they're better than they were with Joe Judge. Much better. Because I think Brian Dable's got a lot out of this team already. And I'm seeing what this team could be. See, that's the problem with owners and general managers. I see Nathaniel Hackett and I see a guy who can't get it done. I see Matt Rule and see a guy who never should have been hired. Disaster right away. Sometimes a good coordinator in the NFL is better. I don't even say sometimes. Most of the time, a good coordinator in the NFL is better than a college coach because the NFL coordinators, they know the system. They've been there. They've played. They've been around it. For the life of me, I don't know why Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten a job yet. Deuce Staley's going to get a job. Somebody's going to hire that dude. When you've been around the game, you understand it. These college guys come, they don't know it.
Join the show with one touch of a button. It's Sports Talk 3.0 on Bettor Sports Network.
On call with Dr. Roto on Bettor Sports Network.
All right, we'll have Dr. Morse on with us hopefully very soon. Look forward to talking to him about some injury news because we got to play close attention. Got to play close attention. I'm trying to go through my list that I want to ask him about. Certain guys, I mean, we know the obvious names, right? We know the obvious names, but I want to look for, guys who can actually help us a little bit too, like, Nico Collins. And I know that we kind of hate Nico Collins, but when there's going to be six teams on a bye in a week, he might be a guy that we're playing. Embarrassing, right? But and do you know that Shaquille, aka Darius Leonard, hasn't played it down this season? Has he played it down? I don't think he's played it down. It's been pretty terrible. I want to say. Ask him about Hunter Renfrow. I want to ask about Darren Waller. We'll get to him in a second. All right, let's get to some tight ends, shall we? There are certain guys. Juwan Johnson, for example. I'm going to give you Juwan Johnson, for example. Here's my problem with him. Whenever I play Juwan Johnson, he does nothing. Literally, goose egg. If I'm lucky, 2 for 18. When I don't play Juwan Johnson, the guy catches 2 touchdowns. I'm like, I can't win. Like, he's killing me. I mean, just killing me. So I tell you to pick him up, but I'll tell you to be careful. Just be careful because you don't know what you're getting. You absolutely don't know what you're getting. Let me see some other guys that I want to picking up here. Let's see. I still like Hayden Hurst. I'm still a fan of Hayden Hurst. And I'm still a fan of Dawson Knox if he's available. But you know who I'm a bigger fan of? Dr. Jesse Morse, who finally joins us. What's up, Dr. Morse? How you doing, my friend?
Good. How are we?
Doing well. So let's get right to it. We saw Brees Hall leave the game, found out it's an ACL. Dynasty fantasy football managers. Can we expect to see him on the field next year?
Well, he'll be on the field. The concern I have is more so what I'll call the Saquon effect.
Meaning
Can you
what?
trust him in the first year? Two running backs came back from ACLs this past year. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. We're in week 8. How you doing?
Well, Gus Edwards did pretty well,
But
you had to wait 8 weeks for him.
correct. And J.K. Dobbins had a setback, and from his original surgery, had scar tissue development, and that's why he had to have surgery again. So he'll be out probably another month.
All right, very naive question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a difference between a good ACL injury and a bad ACL injury, or are all ACLs the same?
Oh no, they're very different. Dobbins was a bad one. We don't know specifics of Brees Hall's, but it sounds like it may. What does that mean? Here's my model. A clean ACL tear is the ACL by itself with no MCL, no LCL, no what we call posterolateral corner, and maybe a little bit of meniscus. Ideally, no meniscus, but a little bit is okay. It's about 30%. That's what Brees Hall had, a ACL and a little bit of meniscus. Now, I'll give you an example. Michael Gallup had a grade 2 MCL and an ACL. He waited over a month to even have surgery so that the MCL could heal up. That's why it took him a month, but he also came back at 7 months, maybe almost 8 months, which is impressive. Now, Dobbins had a bad one, and he took over a year and still didn't look right. Gus Edwards took over a year and almost 2 months. So if we look back, Dalvin Cook looked okay in the first year, but broke out in the second year. Saquon looked okay last year, had that fluky ankle injury, broke out this year, or re-broke out, whatever you want to call it. That first year back from an ACL, especially for running backs, is a mental barrier. Very, very tough.
You said from the very beginning you were not thrilled with James Robinson, but yet week 1 he looked spry. In week 2 he looked good, but now all of a sudden starting to go downhill. Yep. What James Robinson can Jet fans expect to be getting now? Is this a guy who's just trying to get through this year? Is he a guy that you can give 10 carries, 15, 20? What do you think the James Robinson that you're getting is?
It's a good question. So I think the reason why he had such success early on is because he was fresh and that Achilles tendon was still really, really tight. Now, as it starts to get more lax with more reps, you're going to start to see a lack of explosiveness. And that's kind of what happened over the past couple of weeks. Now, I forgot somebody on Twitter compared the stats for ETN and James Robinson. And with the same offensive line, say everything's basically the same, except for the effectiveness. James Robinson was not effective at all. The past couple of weeks, he just did not have burst. He was getting hit behind the line. He just was not overly effective. Whereas you look at ETN, he was the opposite, and the statistics were significant. I mean, they weren't just a little bit different. They were a lot different.
Right. They were. Right. You even tweeted out there that he was a good buy low candidate. ETN.
Who's that?
ETN.
Yeah. I've been in love with ETN since July or so. Maybe before that, but I knew the talent was there. He needed to trust his foot, and then the team and quarterback needed to trust him. I wasn't worried about the foot. I was more worried about James Robinson, his Achilles. I was surprised he did what he did, to be honest with you. What's going on with Cam Akers, unfortunately, is not surprising to me.
All right, let's change it up to DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, was playing well, goes up, comes down. He's in a cart 2 seconds later. Is this a 1 weeker, 3 weeker, 5 weeker? What are we looking at here?
let's just say the first thought I had was ACL, because the way he landed and the way his knee kind of gave out with no one contacting him, that's unfortunately what we traditionally think of, especially when you're going off in a cart and he's not using the bathroom. This is not a common injury in the NFL. This is a much more common injury in the NBA, jumper's knee. And the problem here is if this was just a mild injury, this wouldn't have happened the way it happened. Think of a 1-inch wide piece of tape. That's the tendon coming off of the bottom of the kneecap, attaching to the tibia, the shin. Now think of ripping that in half, and you only have in half of that rope to withstand the still a half an inch instead of a 1-inch wide, but it's still trying to load that same force as if it was 1 inch. Now, every time you run, that kneecap pulls up and down like a bungee cord, up and down, up and up and down. Well, every time you run, that half-inch tendon is pulling down in that kneecap, but it's trying to do the force of a 1-inch tendon. Now you're going to ask it to heal, which it won't because it doesn't. That's not supposed to. So what they're going to have to do is a combination between PRP and stem cell to heal up that tissue as much as it can. I have access to the best products in the world, just like they do. And I'm not confident that he would be back in a month.
Wow.
And if this is bad enough tear, this may never be the same. I know it sounds crazy, but so I saw this recently, and I can't give specifics because it'll be very obvious. But if you fully tear the patellar tendon, I'll use my model. If you think of it again as tension, if you fully tear this tendon, that means the kneecap is probably gonna rise up because the quad tendon is still there. But when you tie this back down and they would resuture the tendon to the bottom of the kneecap, they may never get that same level of tension as it originally was. So that screws up the mechanics of the knee. It's almost like if you had your car's wheel alignment permanently off.
Being naive again, what is the difference between jumper's knee and bad tendonitis?
They're essentially the same thing. Tendonitis is inflammation in and around a tendon. If that does not properly resolve itself, it will turn into what we call tendinopathy. I like to think of tendinopathy as the individual lanes on a highway. Each lane is a piece of the tendon, and that would be normal and straight. What happens in tendinopathy is those lanes on the highway start to go crazy, as if like it's some crazy back dirt road. And that tendon is never straight again. Now, you can have tendinitis on tendinopathy. Now, over time, that tendinopathy is what starts to partially tear off that bone. The weakest spot on a tendon is what we call the enthesis, which is where it attaches to the bone. So and that's where it partially tears. So traditionally it's in the middle of the kneecap, but it can be on the medial or inside of the knee, and it can be on the lateral or outside of the knee. It depends on how that person, how their gait is, how the force of their knee pulls that tendon. My personal is more central, but anyone I put an ultrasound on his knee, and this is the same injury, I'll explain it this way. What happened to DK Metcalf is a partial version of what happened to JC Jackson.
Okay.
So it's like a 50 or 60%, whereas JC Jackson is 100%. Think of it that way.
Now, I had horrible knee tendonitis from all years of playing volleyball. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
First thing they tell you, strengthen the area around the knee.
Yep.
Right? Strengthen your quads, strengthen your hamstring, strengthen all those things. And then, of course, you can wear those bands. You could buy these things in the store. They take away a little of the pain for a little bit. Would that be enough for a DK Metcalf here? Could he
No.
Band-aid it like that?
No, I mean, I'm assuming he's been dealing with this for a while. This was just the final straw. What he should have, and maybe he has done, it just wasn't effective enough, is inject this in the off season, because this really is really uncomfortable and not something you want to do if you're playing on Sunday. I don't care what product you're using. Is you inject this with a product that will re-strengthen or regenerate the tissue. PRP, which is taken out of the blood, different types of stem cell, which either are taken from bone marrow or fat, or we have a couple allografts that are available around the world. And each of them help to regrow that tissue. It may not be perfect like it was when you were 15, but it's much stronger than the current situation. The problem is it doesn't do it overnight. It takes weeks, if not months. That's the tricky part here. So you can throw a little brace on it, but you're not going to be able to dissipate that energy and be able to translate that energy with the force that he's looking to do. If he was just jogging from here to across the street, not a big deal. But you're asking him to run full speed routes, cut on a dime, and then cut back and then maybe go again. That patellar tendon is not going to be able to do that until he's confident in it and until it's at least 70 or 80% healed, like strong. It's probably 30 or 40% now. Obviously, we don't know.
Let me use Hall and Metcalf as both examples. How could a guy make a great play and 2 plays later they tear an ACL? Does that mean, was it the play? Was it the way they moved? Or was it inevitably going to happen? It could have been that play. It could have been 3 plays later.
This, I think, is where you're going to get a huge variation of opinion. It may be how they trained. It may be who they interact with. And maybe their surgical mindset. Here's my opinion. I'll use 2 examples because they're completely different. Breece Hall already had a partial tear, in my opinion. That ligament was already loose. This was just the final straw. I'll give you a comparison because his was non-contact, which is about 70 to 80% of them, the most common. So it wasn't someone hitting that knee and forcing it out of place to tear. That's what happened to J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins was a rare contact ACL. If that person wasn't in front of J.K. Dobbins, he probably would have never tore that ACL. But he was, and he did. Breece Hall made a cut. I reviewed the video several times, and I finally got a new one, but basically when they told us the diagnosis, there really wasn't anyone near his knee. His knee shifted. I tweeted you out Monday, whatever day it was. You can see when he planted, the distal femur, the top bone, shifts. It actually moves. And that's when he tore the ACL, because that is what holds it in place. Now, if he did it on that play, if he did it 10 plays later, there's one other factor: the turf. The turf is a massive issue. It does not give like grass does. You cannot cut turf. When you have cleats on, your cleats get stuck in the turf, depending on the type. Whereas grass, if you have cleats on in grass, you can move your foot and it will cut the grass and you'll shift the energy. The problem with cleats and turf is that once you have your foot in the ground and you turn, it's going to say nope, and it dissipates the energy back to your body. And
if you're
in OBJ's case, it was ACL, and Gallup's case,
right,
it was ACL.
why do they even let players play on turf anymore? Seriously. I know, but you lose money when these guys get hurt and they don't play for a year.
I know. If you look at the data, and we're working on it, the fantasy doctors, and they're getting better with their types of turf. There's a bunch of different types. And they're getting better. But the problem is it doesn't have the same dissipation of energy. And if you remember, I want you to go back to Tua's first injury that started everything against the Bills. Remember when Milano hit him and he banged his head against the ground, but it wasn't an overly hard hit. Why did that cause that abnormal gait? Because that field, I believe, is turf. Yeah. And underneath turf is concrete. You slam your head on concrete, you tell me what it feels like. It's 85 out here. I live 20 minutes from the stadium. It's not cold ground. That should not have caused a concussion. slam your head on concrete, it will.
Right. Well, could you
That's
imagine
the
the old
problem.
concrete they played on the AstroTurf years ago? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right? I mean, you're not dissipating energy, and it's solid. Whether it's hitting your head, whether it's hitting your shoulder, AC sprain, whether you're hitting, whether the cleat gets stuck, whether it's a turf toe, a high ankle sprain. Once this data is truly out, and the owners won't want it to be out because it's going to cost them millions, but they're making billions, so it's a moot point. We will see how bad it is, and especially lower extremity injuries, your ankles and your knees, which is pretty much half of what these guys deal with. It will be so much higher in turf than regular. You're like, well, this is a no-brainer. But the problem is, if it's a quote-unquote problem, it's a pain to maintain grass. Right? But these guys are making hundreds of millions a year.
No,
I don't care if you have to change it out every 3 weeks.
Right.
You know?
Let me give you another player. Alan Lazard. Alan Lazard's in a sling. He's been the only guy that Aaron Rodgers throws to with any regularity. But man, I think he's a tough guy. But when he left the game, he wasn't coming back. Do you see him playing in the next couple of weeks?
So I didn't see this play, unfortunately, but I did hear that he was in a sling. So there's one of two injuries. He's been dealing with that ankle injury for a lot of the season. He reportedly got stepped on in camp. I don't know if it was a high ankle, if it was some weird, whatever it was, it affected him. But he played through it admirably. What he did here is one of two injuries. He either dislocated his shoulder or he suffered an AC sprain.
Right.
AC sprain is much more common. But obviously you can dislocate your shoulder, ask Dalvin Cook. T. Higgins dislocated his shoulder last year, early in the season. He took 2 weeks off. Remember, I think most people remember he had a couple weeks off and then he came back and he was fine. He tore his labrum. He dislocated his shoulder, tore his labrum, took a couple weeks off to rehab, and played the rest of the season and had off-season shoulder surgery. You can do that. I'll give you another example. Grade 1 AC sprain. That's what Saquon had, and he's been dealing with for the past couple of weeks. You can play with it. Grade 2, or what we call a type 2, that's likely what DeAndre Swift has.
Do you think we'll see Swift back this week?
He was close last week. So the issue I had with Swift is I thought he would have been back this week. So either they're being really conservative or it was a little worse than I anticipated. So either he had a type 3 or he had a dislocation and it wasn't a sprain, or they're being really conservative. Obviously, we don't know. If it was a type 3, half of those go to surgery. These are rough. Yeah. And you know, if it was a dislocation, which is basically the same thing as I just said, that makes sense. That could have taken a couple weeks. Maybe they're just being extra careful. We heard something fascinating from the Lions staff the other day. They said Amon-Ra St. Brown cleared the concussion protocol, but they didn't allow him back in the game.
Well, I think, when they made the mistake with Tua, there's always overcorrection, right?
I get it.
At some point, the guy would have played 99 times out of 100, but because of what's happened this year, they said, sit down.
Correct. Yeah. So then that begs the question, do we risk Swift this week? And I'll give you another example. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has missed every game except for half of week 1 coming into week 7.
But they only played him a half because they didn't want to push him.
No, he took himself out because he felt like he was ready. He was going to re-injure it.
I thought that's not what I heard, that they said that they wanted to take him out to preserve him.
If you read, unless I read it incorrectly, if you read Daniel Popper, I think is his name, it's a quote. He basically said, I felt like I had concerns and I felt like I wasn't 100% and I didn't want to re-injure it, is basically the way I interpret it. But here's the problem. Why would you rush it on a 30-year-old veteran who has a bye next week after you just missed 5 weeks?
Right.
Like that to me doesn't make any sense.
Right.
If he's a spring chicken in 22, okay, fine. But not a security blanket And now are they out both of their guys? Because Mike Williams has a bad high ankle sprain. I thought he broke his leg. I thought he fractured his leg. He got lucky. Do they not have either of their guys? And Palmer's in the concussion protocol.
Palmer should be back though next week.
He should be. I mean, he should be, right?
All right, let me ask you about David Njoku, who I think everybody thought this guy was out for the year. Now they're talking 2 to 5 weeks. I think that's lucky.
Yeah.
But look, we're heading into week 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is this guy going to be back for our fantasy playoffs?
I hate the fact I'm happy he didn't do something worse. High ankles are awful though, but nonetheless, I hate the timeline they gave us because they didn't specify if it was mild or moderate, grade 1 or grade 2. Grade 1s are you can get away with 2 to 3 weeks. The grade 2, that's what Daniel Jones, right? Daniel Jones played in 1 week, which is insane, but because he's quarterback, he got away with it. Whereas grade 2s are rough. Grade 2s usually take a month, sometimes up to 6 weeks. Obviously, route runners are going to have a little bit more issues. So that's what makes it challenging. I don't know. I mean, and Deshaun's coming back in a month.
Right. Hopefully they come back together. All right, let me give you one more guy before we stop. Kadarius Toney. I want this guy to play. You know him from UF. I know him. We all know him. The guy is so good, but it seems like he cannot stay on the field. It's one hamstring. It's both hamstrings. I mean, I don't know. What are you thinking about? Are we going to see this guy at all this year?
At this point, I'm starting to question the Giants staff. And I don't mean it, not the coaching staff, the medical staff. Why is Galladay MIA? Is it a money thing? He's paid, I don't care. Why cannot Tony stay healthy? Some people say there's no such thing as injury prone. I think we might have proved you wrong here. Yeah, and I hate to say it because I love Tony and I was high on him and I have had him. I dropped him by now, but some guys, maybe it's a hip issue. I just have issues with their hamstrings. Julio, perfect example. Obviously later on in his career, but I
would you drop Kadarius Toney if you had him? Would you drop him right now?
I mean, I just can't. It's getting thin unless you're in a crazy deep league. But even then, I don't even think I would play him if he started because I don't trust him. I mean,
I look at the talent. I go, the talent is an A+
The talent is insane. That's why you drafted him. But the problem is he can't stay healthy. He can't get healthy. Never mind stay healthy.
Did Dak Prescott's game surprise you?
Their defense is so good, they don't have to really do a whole lot. Did
he look healthy to you?
He looked okay, but I knew he was going to have some cobwebs, and he did. He'll be better this week. He won't have to do a whole lot this week, though. The problem is, over the next month or so, I was just looking at this, he doesn't really need to push it. They're going to throw the ball 30 times a game, as opposed to 38 last year. They're going to let Zeke, if his knee and quad hold up, and Pollard run the ball. Schultz's knee is barely hanging on. Gallup was, non-existent last week. CD has all the potential in the world, but I don't think they're going to get enough volume.
Right.
So I don't think they need him to be fantasy viable for the team to be good. I mean, the team is good.
Oh,
I mean, the defense is legit. So I want Dak to be the guy he was a couple of years ago. I don't think we see it.
Last question. I keep on saying last question. I have so many questions for you. Dameon Pierce has been really good for the Texans. Really good. Not just good, really good.
Yes.
But he's getting a lot of touches. The first game of the season, it's 12. And now the guy gets close to 24.
Yeah.
I know he's just right out of college. I get that. He's 22 years old.
Yep.
But if he keeps getting 24 touches week in, week out, does that cut his career? At 27, is he an old man? Or could he just be special in that way that we don't, if you're a dynasty owner, you don't have to worry about it?
So I actually tracked this in the offseason. there's usually a correlation between total touches from high school and college, or not high school, college and NFL, and games missed. Usually. There are some exceptions. The main two that come to mind, both of them have got injured this year, so it's kind of ironic, but well, actually, all three of them. Zeke has missed a single game in his entire career, which is absolutely insane to me, but for like playing purposes, not like suspensions. And Jonathan Taylor has never missed a game until a couple weeks ago. And Najee Harris is the other one. When you look at the volume, those guys all have a significant amount of volume. Zeke has by far, the only one higher than Zeke is Ingram, I want to say. I mean, Ingram has a crazy amount of volume, but he's not really a primary guy. The exception to the rule has been Derrick Henry. He's been in my opinion, the only exception. Zeke is different. Zeke is different. And last year he should not have played half the season. But he did. He didn't look very good, but he did. Because of that PCL. So, long-winded answer. Can he make it through the season and be a good dynasty buy? Yes. But I would sell a guy at 26 and be a year early rather than a year late.
Okay. Our friend Replay will ask about Jahan Dotson. Is he ready to come back?
He re-injured his hamstring last Wednesday, the 20th, whatever day that was. So when I heard that, I just didn't think he would be back. I saw the video. He grabbed his hamstring mid-practice, and that was it. So even though they called him questionable, I said, nope, he ain't playing. I don't care. He ain't playing. Maybe this week. He has age on his side, obviously. I don't. When is their bye? Hold on. A lot of things correlate with buys. No, they don't have a bye until week 14. So yeah, I mean, I would say 50-50 this week. Depends on how he does. If he's in a full practice and has no setbacks this week, he's good. If he does have a setback, or he's just not ready, it'll be week 9. But he has a chance to play this week.
All right, Dr. Jesse Morris from the Fantasy Doctors. I feel like I could do this all night, my friend. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
You got it.
Take care.
All right, outstanding stuff as always. We're going to take a break. That was a long segment. We're going to come back with waiver wire receivers right after this.
On Call with Dr. Roto. Corey, Nando, and friends. Presented by Mayo Media, Better Sports Network.
I'm convinced that Babe Ruth is a fictional character. Babe Ruth is not real. No, it's not. Babe Ruth is not real. We've been hoodwinked. We've been bamboozled. We've been led astray. We've been run amok.
Keep going.
Babe Ruth. I don't know the rest. The Babe Ruth is a fictional character. I'm dead serious. Babe Ruth is a fictional character. Y'all are never going to get me to believe that Babe Ruth is real. Babe Ruth is like a baseball Santa Claus. I'm not buying it. After I saw those highlights last night of Babe, like, there's no way you can tell me that Babe Ruth is a real person. Who do you know? There is nobody under the sound of my voice that has ever seen Babe Ruth play. I asked my pop, you ever seen Babe Ruth play? He's like, no. Nobody's ever seen Babe Ruth play.
I mean, come on.
I'm telling you, Babe Ruth is a fictional character. Even Babe Ruth baseball cards, it looked like it's drawn. Like, Babe Ruth is not real. Y'all trying to pull a fast one. Listen, I don't know who made this up. Maybe it was Phil Rizzuto. Maybe it's the Lenny Melnick. But Babe Ruth is not a real person. There's no way. Everything about Babe Ruth is sketchy. If you didn't go to the games, how do you know that it really happened? Or I listened on the radio. You listen to Ovaltine on the radio. That old school radio was all fiction. Everything on old school radio was fake. But you think Babe Ruth is real?
Look, he lived until 1948. So if you find someone who's like 85 years old, they might have remembered him when he was little, when they were a little teenager.
Babe Ruth was made up by baseball purists. I am certain
You do that thing where you pause the Babe Ruth video and you zoom in and you zoom in and you zoom in. You see like some artist autograph like right here.
Yeah, you like
Some digital art right here. Yeah.
Somebody need to investigate this and see if Babe Ruth is a real person. I'm pretty sure Babe Ruth is a fictional character created to make people think that like there was this great jolly old baseball player that drank beers and ate hot dogs and hit 60 home runs. Like the home run record before Babe Ruth was like 14. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and
But
now
he figured it out, you know, like who figured out the dunk, right? Like he's just like,
that's like Dr. J or something like. Then Dr. J, probably was before Dr. J, but Dr. J made the dunk famous. Babe Ruth made the home run famous, or maybe that was a way to get people to like. We're gonna make baseball America's pastime, but in order to do so, we need somebody who we can make the face of the sport. And they didn't have no face of the sport. So they're like, okay, let's make him a fictional guy that played for the Red Sox and was traded to the Yankees for like tickets to tickets to cats. You know what I'm saying? Like the Red Sox get a Yankees.
You tried to say Les
There's
Miserables.
is there any footage of Babe Ruth in the Red Sox uniform? None. I'm telling you, Babe Ruth is a fictional character.
The doctor is in. Get your prescription to win fantasy sports and betting on Bettor Sports Network.
I love my man, the fantasy executive. I don't know what he says half the time, but I know I love him. He's a good guy. That was a good segment with Dr. Morse. Man, I feel like I can talk about injuries forever. But what bothers me about injuries is that Breece Hall was healthy 1 minute, and the next minute he's done for the season. I mean, you're a Jet fan. You watch that touchdown run. You couldn't be more excited. Your team is going to win a road game against the Broncos. You're thinking, finally, this is the Jets, right? We're going to be doing this. And all of a sudden, it's over. Like, it just shouldn't happen. And I feel badly for Jet fans. I do. They're cursed. Cursed. Can't get lucky. Mekhi Becton, hurt. Vera Tucker, hurt. Breece Hall, hurt. I mean, come on. Same thing with the Chargers. It's like those two teams are just always snake bit. Look, I don't care if teams suck. Teams suck, they suck, right? I get that. But I don't want teams to be bad because of injuries. I want them to be bad because they have bad coaching, bad players. But, you know, the Jets Jets might not win another game this year. I'm not saying they won't. Let's not be dramatic. But I'm saying, would it shock you if the Jets won 2 more games? Jets are on the way to the playoffs. Now they're on the way nowhere. Is one guy that good? Well, if your name is Breece Hall Roto, it is. All right, let's get to the waiver wire wide receivers. And I want to pick up from what Dr. Morse was talking about here. Joshua Palmer. Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Joshua Palmer. And I think more importantly, Mike Williams, not 100%. Keenan Allen dealing with injuries. Josh Palmer going to come back after this week from his concussion, right? They're on bye, has a concussion. It'll be over with. He'll be playing again. And this guy will be back in the starting lineup. Nobody wants him. Everybody's upset at him. He hasn't done what we thought he'd do. I get that. Now he's on the bye. This is a perfect guy to stash. Perfect guy to stash. Or don't cut him. You may want to cut him, but don't cut him. You're going to regret it. Let's talk about Wan'Dale Robinson, the Giants' #1 receiver. They love him. They designed plays for him. He's just everything the Giants want. He's Isaiah McKenzie in Southern New York versus Buffalo. Probably better than McKenzie. A little more juice. But like both players, like McKenzie, underrated. I think Wan'Dale's underrated. I think people are not realizing how good this kid is. And people aren't realizing how good Brian Dable schemes. And people aren't realizing how he puts players in positions to succeed. Are the Giants that different this year than they were last year? What's the big difference? Thibodeau? Saquon. And coaching. It's always coaching. Good coaches get the most out of players. Bad coaches don't. It's like teachers. Think about the teachers you had in school. The years you had a great math teacher, you loved math. The years you had a crappy math teacher, you didn't. When a teacher inspires you, you love the class. When a coach inspires you, you go out there and you hit. I think it's what has kept the Jets really good. I think Robert Saleh's been doing a great job. All right, Josh Reynolds, DJ Chark on the IR, Jameson Williams. Who knows when this dude's coming back? Amon-Ra St. Brown looking like a China doll, sadly, because I love the player. I love the player, but he's not out there. But Josh Reynolds vibes with Jared Goff. They know each other from the Rams. He's a solid enough player. He's overlooked. Worth a pickup. Forget Paris. Remember that movie with Billy Crystal? Did you forget Paris? I know that I did. I liked Paris Campbell when he was a third-round pick out of Ohio State, but the guy couldn't stay healthy, couldn't find the field. But you know what you've seen the last couple of weeks? You've seen a pretty decent player. Now the question is, with Ehlinger, is Ehlinger going to be able to find Paris Campbell? Probably not. Would I bid heavily on him? No, but people will. They'll see 10 for 70 and a touchdown, and they'll be like, ooh, I love this guy. How much should I pay? You're not going to overpay for him because you got a backup quarterback there. Don't forget, you got Alec Pierce. You got Jonathan Taylor. You got 17 tight ends. You got Michael Pittman. What are you paying for Campbell? You're going to end up overpaying. Don't do it. Marquise Goodwin. Here's another guy, Marquise Goodwin. Now, firstly, we've seen Marquise Goodwin between the Bills and the 49ers. He's a jag. This guy is just a guy. He's got some speed. They always talk about it. He was in the 2012 Olympics, finished 10th. Dude, that was 10 years ago. Come on. Maybe he was fast, but is he really still that fast? And let's not over-exaggerate the second touchdown. J.C. Jackson couldn't do anything there, got injured. So I'm not dissing what Marquise Goodwin did. Let's just not inflate it. They don't throw the ball enough anyway. Only throws the ball about 26 to 28 times a game. So please don't spend your hard-earned fab dollars on him. You're going to regret it. Replay Reel says Josh Palmer over Bateman or Alec Pearson at PPR. No, Bateman is 1. Palmer is 2. I like Alec Pierce, but I don't know about the quarterback situation. Palmer has a great quarterback. He just needs to play because of the injuries. Right? How much playing time will he have? If Mike Williams is there and Keenan Allen is there, Josh Palmer is not great. But if one of these two guys is out, he's starting, and then you want to have him. So I know the way you play Replay Reel. He's the kind of guy, he's like the backup running back that we don't get rid of. He's like the backup running back that we keep. Because as soon as you get rid of him, as soon as this guy's not there anymore, what do you know happens? There's an injury, and then you wish you had him. It's like, what if you cut Michael Carter last week? What if you cut Michael Carter? You're like, this guy isn't playing. Breece Hall's got 70% of the touches. I need the roster spot. You cut Michael Carter. Now, Michael Carter's going to go for $400, $500 in fab. And then you're like, oh, I had Michael Carter. Oh, I had Michael Carter. You walk around, I had Michael Carter. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. All right. I wanted to give you a couple more tight ends. I forgot a couple. Greg Dulcich. First of all, let me talk about Dulcich. Once again, I always go back to watch your college football. Watch your college football. Dulcich was a really good player at UCLA. Really solid tight end. Arguably the best tight end in the draft. Arguably. Best receiving tight end in the draft for my money. Albert O. Who's Albert O? I don't even remember this guy. Did I draft him? I did. The problem is Russell Wilson's hurt. Brett Rippon stinks. It hurts Dulcich. You put Dulcich on the Buccaneers. Speaking of the Buccaneers, Cade Otton. I like Cade Otton. It's good for 4 or 5 catches a game. Solid player. Big, strong. Played really well at University of Washington. Brady likes him. That's important. By the way, how blown away were we with the Buccaneers losing? That may have been the suicide. You know how there's always 1 week in a suicide pool where you have where you pick the wrong team, the team that feels like the no-brainer team. This team is going to win. I'm all in. And like 82% of the people in that pool are all out. That was the Buccaneers. Crazy, right? All right, let me give you Harrison Bryant as well. I like Harrison Bryant. Solid player. If you have David Njoku, Bryant is absolutely a guy that you'd be looking at. He's got good hands. He's got good size. I mean, he has no relationship with Jacoby Brissett, but that doesn't mean there's not ability there. All right, let's see. Trade Deontay Johnson for Wandale in a PPR dynasty. Ooh, I'm going to go with no. I like Deontay more. Deontay is just a more talented player. I like Wandale, but Deontay is more talented. And I like Kenny Pickett. I think there's significant upside with Pickett in a dynasty league. It's not like Deontay's old. This guy's not ancient. He got 2 years on Wandale? No problem. I'm good with that. All right. Fanatic says, hope you're doing well. I am. Thank you. I have a running back dilemma. Connor, Hunt, Dillon, Gus, and Pacheco. Should I use my top waiver wire to pick up Chuba or Algier? Definitely not Chuba. I do like Tyler Algier. Or just wait till the morning and pick up Rachaad White. Now you're speaking my language. You pick up Rachaad White. You don't waste a waiver wire pickup there. You don't need Algier that much. I mean, he's good, but not great. Give me Rachaad White. I will literally go down on the Rachaad White hill. So here's Rachaad White hill. This is me. I will go down on this hill if he does nothing this year. It's okay. Because I know if Leonard Fournette gets traded, I know if Leonard Fournette gets injured, I got a guy who's a league winner. A league winner. And I'm not playing. Do I give a crap about Chuba Hubbard? No. Do I like Algier? I do. He's a really good runner. He's a hard runner. I've been putting him on my rosters from the beginning of the year, waiting for the stash. But can I really play him? Can I really play him? No, I can't. He doesn't catch that many passes. The team doesn't score that many points. So it's rough. It's a little rough. All right. Going to take a quick timeout. Very quick. Super quick. But when we come back, what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about those Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to tell you what the problem is when we return right after this.
On call with Dr. Roto.
Done better.
Better Sports Live with Lisa Ann and Rick Kamla at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific.
We've talked about this. It's you're not into that to the dynasty thing.
I don't, dynasty is like a long-term relationship, and that just is really tough for me, Rick,
I understand.
It is such, and then when you say the two things that you say that probably scare me the most is a 14-team dynasty. Then I'm like, oh, this is a now complex relationship that requires a lot of my attention. Not
and
just
a dog that you don't like and all of that stuff, right?
Lunch Money with Kyle and Ray. Weekdays at noon Eastern, presented by FantasyGuru.com.
I wish they'd get rid of instant replay. I think it's damaging to the sport. I just don't like it.
They will never get rid of instant replay on the broadcast. We demand it, and that's why. Remember, replay kind of rose out of the fact that people would sit at home and say, "Why can't they look at this? Why can't they see? I get to see the replay, and I know it's wrong. Why don't they get it?" So that said, okay, we'll have replay. Ray, we're never going to get rid of replay.
No.
Like you couldn't say, "Hey, the NFL will get rid of it, but we're not going to show it on broadcast." What if the NFL said, we'll get rid of replay, but we will not show any instant replays at the stadium? would you be okay with, like, you'd still get them at home and you could still yell at the TV, but the ref can't hear you there.
Right.
Like, I feel part of it is they have to have replay because the millions upon millions of people watching the game have replay. So, like, you can't have replay when everybody else has it, but the guys making the decisions don't have it. Like, you gotta have replay. It's impossible.
It is impossible. It's just my dream. It doesn't help.
You get better dreams, Ray. That's not really like
it doesn't help. That's the thing. If we use replay and it creates as many questions as answers that it solves, what's the point of it?
Well, it's not going to change, Ray Flowers. You're going to be an old man still yelling at the replay cloud.
Better Sports Network is betting, fantasy, collectibles. It's sports talk done better.
On call with Dr. Roto on Better Sports Network.
All right. Let me give you some, before we talk a little football, some scores here. The Pelicans beat the Mavericks 113 to 111. Let's see. Luka, 37 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. Dinwiddie, 24 and 5. Christian Wood, 23 points and 6 rebounds. Nice. For the Pelicans, Trey Murphy, 22 points and 5 rebounds. CJ McCollum, 14 points, 11 rebounds. Let's see. The Thunder beat the Clippers. Ooh, shocking. Zubac, 10 points and 14 rebounds. That was nice. For Oklahoma City, Gilgeous-Alexander, 33 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. Trey Mann, 25 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Wiggins, 11 points, 10 rebounds. Mike Muscala. When Mike Muscala starts putting up 8 points and 10 rebounds, you know it's a good night. The Wizards beat the Pistons handily, 120 to 99. Bogdanovich, 25 points. Isaiah Stewart, 13 points, 10 rebounds. Let's see. For the Wizards, Kuzma, 25 points, 6 rebounds. Porzingis, 20 points, 7 rebounds. And then finally, in the game that is going on right now, in the just started the second half, really, we have the Phoenix Suns beating the Warriors 74 to 70. Draymond Green, 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Steph Curry, 13 points. Been a slow day for Steph. Jordan Poole, 14 points. And then for the Suns, we've got Ayton, 12 points and 11 rebounds. Booker, 16 points. Chris Paul, 11 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. So should be a good game here. If you want to take that in-game betting, I'm thinking anything that has to do with Steph Curry, he will light it up in the second half. That's this man's opinion. All right, let's talk Buccaneers. And by the way, we'll have do a short segment here. Come back with Jason Braddock next segment, and looking forward to it. Somebody asks Al Cavelli, how do you rank Miles Sanders, Mostert, James Robinson, and Gus Edwards? 1, Mostert. Looks good. Love the matchup this week. 2, Miles Sanders. 3, Gus Edwards. And 4, James Robinson. Robinson looks slow. It's the injury. Gus Edwards doesn't catch enough passes, and if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's limited, but he could score a touchdown. Miles Sanders I like, but, Mostert looks like he's the goal line back. He's caught a few passes last week. I really liked him overall. I think I'm a fan. So here's the question about Tampa. And let's throw Green Bay. Let's throw the Bays in here. Is Tom Brady, or are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers washed? Are they done? No. But there's a general malaise to both of these teams. Tampa looks like it's going through the motions. There's no spark. Do I blame Todd Bowles? No, I do not blame Todd Bowles. I think Todd Bowles is a good coach. Is he getting the most out of his guys? That I wonder. The defense has not played well. Brady has not played well. Fournette's played well. Godwin's been injured. The offensive line has been in shambles. Losing Marpet was big. Had some injuries there. And Brady doesn't seem like his heart is into it. Now, who am I to judge? Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. If he says that he's fine, I'm going to take him at his word. But my eyeballs aren't seeing fine. My eyeballs are seeing a guy who's phoning it in, which I hate to see because Bucs fans are good fans. And they didn't deserve this. Tom goes, I'm out. Bye, Tom. Have a good life. Oh, but I want to come back. Well, what do you say? No? Bye? It's like that girlfriend. When she leaves you and she says, I want to come back. Oh, all right. Take her back. Even though you know she's wrong for you, but you take her back. Green Bay is different. Green Bay, they've just given Rodgers some bad receivers. Romeo Dobbs is not great. He's good. He's maybe good in a couple of years, but he's not today. Christian Watson's young and injured. Randall Cobb was good, but he got injured. Alan Lazard is his guy, got injured. He's just had no luck. A.J. Dillon has been underwhelming. Aaron Jones is everything. Defense is good. I do feel badly for Aaron Rodgers. I do think that at the end of that game, he was pounding his hand on the turf. He wanted to win that game, for sure. I do like Brian Robinson, though. I told you that. They just gave the ball to him in the fourth quarter there and sucked that clock dry. But I do worry about both these teams. So if you've got them, I'll tell you this. I'm not cutting Tom Brady. I'm not cutting Aaron Rodgers. But you have to have other options. They are matchup based. 100% matchup based. Do I love Tom Brady this week against Baltimore? No. Would I play him against Baltimore? I don't know. I don't know about that. It's like I say to my son, Little Roto, I don't know about that, Chief. Not sure about that. Shaky. Shaky at best. And Green Bay, I feel the same way. Green Bay is paying Buffalo this week. Good luck. Now, maybe they could slow down Josh Allen. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe Stephon Diggs gets slowed down by Jair Alexander. Good luck with McKenzie. Good luck with Gabriel Davis, excuse me. Don't forget Dawson Knox. And by the way, I'm throwing out a guy here. Over bye weeks, young guys get taught more. Take a squint at James Cook. I just have a feeling Zach Moss was inactive before the bye week. James Cook gets more time to practice, more time to get confident, more opportunities. He could work in with Devin Singletary, and maybe as opposed to a 90-10 split, you're looking at like a 65-35 split. Cook has not done what anybody thought he'd do. We all loved Cook at the draft. He's been a monumental disappointment. Monumental disappointment. But right now, you want to win this thing, you better figure out a way to get Cook involved. He's way faster than Singletary. He's a guy who's electric. Electric players need to get into committees and get involved and get snap shares. Needs to happen. There are certain things that teams have to do. It's kind of like in the NBA. You know how in the NBA rotations go from here to here? You tighten the rotation, and then you find the guys who help you win, and you play that 8-man rotation, and you go deep into the playoffs. I think here it's the same way. I don't think you need to go with 3 running backs. I think you go with 2. I don't think Zach Moss ever needs to be on this field. Ever. You have Devin Singletary, great. You have James Cook, great. That's all you need. Zach Moss is there in case of an injury. Outside of that, are you ever playing him? No. You've got Allen, you got Diggs, you got Davis, you got McKenzie, you got Knox. So keep your eye on a James Cook. I like him. I like what he can provide. I like the speed. Right? I like that speed out of the backfield because Singletary, he's elusive, but he's not fast. He's not breaking any 50-yarders. There's something about when you watch Brees Hall Roto and he breaks the big one. It's a game changer. It's a game changer, both for the offense and the defense. The offense feels great, and the opposing defense, it's like, oh man, it's a dagger right in the heart. That's how you win games in the NFL. Replay asked Jaylen Warren or James Cook in a PPR. Here's the thing. Jaylen Warren is good. And if Najee Harris is out, then Jaylen Warren is in. For sure. For sure. But if Najee Harris plays, Jaylen Warren is limited, where James Cook could have more of an opportunity. So, I will hold Warren here because I think Warren could be more. If Najee's out, Warren does more. Whereas if Singletary's out, Moss comes in, Cook is in, the passing game is in. It's just a little murkier for me. It's a little murkier. But look, you're talking about two guys I really like. Two guys who could help you win going down the stretch. Need a little luck. Need a little injury luck. The right guy gets injured. You have the backup. Boom. Good things are going to happen. All right. You know when else good things are going to happen? When we come back, Jason Braddock joins us. And you know good things happen when Jason's here with us. We'll talk to him when we return right after this.
On Call with Dr. Roto.
Darren Ravel's here, our very first guest ever. The Action Network. Darren, thanks so much for doing this, man.
Of course, anytime I could be the first guest on anything, not to downgrade you, but yeah, no, this is great.
Darren, if I can go back to this Mickey Mantle thing real quick, this $12.6 million, do you think that would have been like 20 if this happened like 6 months ago?
This makes sense. I mean, you have such a beautiful card. The story about they couldn't get rid of these things because it was it was the high numbers, and the whole story on the mantle. Like basically it was the high numbers, so it was the second set of cards that came in. We moved on, and then like by 53, they're like, wait, that's the old ones. That's 52, and they couldn't really sell any of them, so they dumped them off a barge. And so you had a scarcer versions of the 52 cards. Listen, I think crypto had people spending a ton of money, obviously. And so I think there's probably a little bit of a downturn, but I think where you see most of the downturn is things that don't make sense. And, to me, I just think, yes, there's still things that I'm just absolutely shocked about. But even in memorabilia, even by looking at Heritage last night, man, I think I had $59,000 in bids that all lost. It seems pretty healthy out there in the collectibles market.
Tell us about this Hugh Hefner Viagra pill container. You know what I'm saying? I've heard the stories about it. How did is it prescribed? Did you go to was it that CBS filled it? Like what? Like how did you come across that? That's a cool piece.
Yeah, listen, people think it's funny, but like it is what it is. I just saw it. There was a estate sale from his ex-wife Julian's Auctions, and his pill bottle was up there, and it said it was worth $1,000, and I was like, I don't think it's worth $1,000. I mean, it's the greatest party trick of all time to show it is his real pill bottle from the pharmacy. Hefner, you, take one pill prior to sex, 2 if needed. It's great. No pills inside, but I did spend $8K on it. And the way people, I wish you would have told me you were going to tell. I would have brought it here with me. But it's in a vault, and when I know that I need to pull some trick at a party or something, I might bring it out. But it's a good item. You need one of one stuff. I think that in this world, I think it's worth it to protect yourself in getting one of one stuff. It doesn't have the same liquidity because you can't say, oh, that sold yesterday for this. But I have comfort in that.
Make bets and follow your fantasy team while you buy, sell, and trade collectibles in real time. Only on Bettor Sports Network.
On Call with Dr. Roto on Bettor Sports Network.
All right, we are back. It is Tuesday night, about 11:35 Eastern, 10:35 Central. No better time to talk to my man, Jason Braddock, when reality meets fantasy is when Dr. Roto meets Jason Braddock. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Hey, what's going on, Doc? Thanks for having me as always.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it. I know you love your Clemson guys. You know, the South Carolina education, hard work there. Why do I see Trevor Lawrence when he gets by the opposing team's 20? Why does every pass that he throws into the end zone about 5 feet above his receivers?
Nah, it's a good question. I don't have a great answer for it. You really didn't see that problem there at Clemson. The one thing with Trevor Lawrence, I would say, and we talked about a little bit in the past as well, that coming into the NFL, he wasn't as polished, I think, as a lot of the fans and people out there that really don't evaluate thought he would be. It was just the reason he was just tremendous upside guy is what he had already shown and the potential that he could reach. So he still hasn't reached that potential, but you're already seeing a lot of growth from last year to this year, especially when you look at all the struggles for those second year quarterbacks from that class. I think Lawrence is already showing you he's head and shoulders above them. Now he just has to take that next step, and I think we'll see that next.
Now, Travis Etienne is the unquestioned starting running back there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Did it shock you that they moved on from James Robinson?
No, not at all. I thought it was, earlier in the season, I told you I was surprised. I said, if you give Travis Etienne, multiple carries, if you give him the right workload, he showed you at Clemson with his balance and explosion and burst. The guy's going to have a 40-plus yard run almost every game. And that's what I said. But it seems like this year has been a 30-plus yard run. Same thing in the receiving game. He's got that type of ability. So he was always the premier back. It was weird what Urban Meyer said last year about him maybe having to be that slot receiver type role. And I think a lot of people ran with that. Then the injury hit. Then he comes back this year. He's got to work back and it's basically his rookie season. And I think Jaguars realized like, oh, this is why we took him in the first round. And so with James Robinson, you could kind of read the tea leaves what was going to happen several days out before the trade deadline, which is now a week away. They gave him 0 touches. He came in that game, but he had 0 touches in that game. There was no way they were going to injure him in a contract year before the trade deadline when they already have their bell cow and ETN.
All right. You mentioned trade deadline. The NFL does not see that many trades. We've already seen a couple, which is rare. And there's always a lot of smoke, but very little fire. Which other guys do you think will realistically be moved? Will a Cam Akers be moved? Will a Leonard Fournette be moved? Who gets moved in the next week?
Yeah, I like guys, especially guys in contract years. One guy in a contract year, David Montgomery. I know they came back and won that game. They're 3-4. If the Bears feel like, hey, there's so much parity, we're in the run and we could get in this hunt for a wild card or, whatever their thinking is. If they're thinking the other way, like, hey, let's get some return on investment. We're not going to pay David Montgomery some huge contract. Let's go ahead and get a return. We've got his replacement in-house in Khalil Herbert. I think David Montgomery to a team like the Bills or somebody that wants a traditional back. I mean, if you add that extra traditional element to the Bills offense, like Devin Singletary's decent, but I mean, you add a David Montgomery to there, it's almost not the same as CMC going to the 49ers, obviously. But when you're talking about these few teams that have Super Bowl aspirations, David Montgomery and Antonio Gibson, one of these backs on a team that aren't going anywhere could possibly look to try to get a return, especially those teams I mentioned that have a guy in-house to replace.
What was Cam Akers' problem, Jason? I mean, the guy's got talent. He was the number 1 high school running back, goes to FSU, can't get a block then goes to the NFL, gets injured. Is he good or is he overrated?
He was a bit overrated. I wasn't as high on him as everyone coming out. That being said, he did show well at times in this offseason. what happened out there in LA, with Sean McVay, but it seemed like there was some disconnect and he definitely looked different. The back we saw early on this season isn't the same back we saw in prior season. I mean, he wasn't hitting the hold, he wasn't exploding. They had to go to Darrell Henderson earlier in the season because he would actually hit the yards and at least get the yards that were there. He wasn't going to do anything spectacular, but he would get you the yards that were there. And Cam Akers wasn't doing that earlier in the year.
All right, I know that you're an NFL draft guru. Tell everybody out there who Michael Carter is. I mean, Michael Carter shared time, right, at UNC with a guy who's pretty good named Javonte Williams, but now he's the Jets' new starting running back. Is he a legitimate 3-down running back?
No, he's not a legitimate 3-down running back. I thought it was decent value where they got him in a draft. He's a decent little receiving back, can give you some type of carries, but he's not going to be your lead back. You bring in a guy like James Robinson, you let him get those carries, and you let Michael Carter be that guy. He just relies on the check down in the passing game, and that's what Zach Wilson we're seeing. I like Zach.
Did we lose Jason? All right, I think we lost Jason. Hopefully we'll get him back really soon. So, Jason, we love you. We need you back. So hopefully we'll cut him off and we'll bring him on back as soon as he can come back on. I want to ask Jason about, I knew, I'm surprised. I thought he would like Michael Carter a little bit more. Michael Carter was a very gently used running back at North Carolina because he split time, with Javonte Williams. And he did look good in spurts for the Jets last year. There were some games where Michael Carter was legitimately good, right? I know I played him in DFS a bunch because I said to myself, the guy could get you 50 yards rushing. He can get you 3 for 40 receiving. And then you get that touchdown. The weeks you get that touchdown, you got a guy who can really help you. So, I mean, that's where Michael Carter is. I wanted to ask Jason, about Paris Campbell, and hopefully we'll do that when he comes back with us in just a couple of seconds. If you have questions, leave them on in the chat room. Come chat with us. And here at the Bettor Sports Network, I am Dr. Roto, and we are on call with Dr. Roto. I am back later in the week. I'm back on Friday nights. And on Friday nights, we break down the games, break down the seasonal aspects, give you some DFS plays, give you some prop bets that I'm going to like. So been pretty successful this year with my prop bets. Sometimes, though, I'll have a bunch. I just don't get them all right at the same time. All right, but we have Jason back. We lost you there for a second, my friend. I'm glad we found you. All right, finish up about Michael Carter for me.
Oh, yeah. So basically all I was saying was all Michael Carter is. Now, I don't think he's an every down back. You've got James Robinson now coming over that can take a lot of those carries. Michael Carter, his value is going to come from, PPR formats. Zach Wilson, really loved him coming out in the draft. Thought he would have shown better than what we've seen at this point. He hasn't. He's really limited in the offense and playing more like a game manager at this time. They have too many weapons for that. But because it is, Zach Wilson will rely on those safe underneath throws. So Michael Carter will have value in PPR. He'll get some carries, but he's not going to be that lead back as far as the rushes.
Jason, talk to me about Sam Ehlinger from the University of Texas, who will be the new starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. They said he has more mobility than Matt Ryan. He's going to need some mobility because that offensive line has not been very good.
No, it's an excellent point. No, I don't think Sam Ehlinger is the answer. I think they're just looking for something to ignite, anything. The AFC South's not good. Most of the NFL teams aren't good. NFL's wanted parity. They've got parity, and a lot of these teams are just mediocre. A lot of these games are 50-50. The Colts feel like there's still an opportunity to get in this hunt, stay in this hunt in the AFC South there with the Titans. And if they've liked what they've seen from Ehlinger, and if he can be that and do it consistently, then it gives them a better product than Matt Ryan. I don't remember what the splits are now, but before that game, I think he had 7 touchdowns, 1 interceptions at home this year for the Colts, and 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions on the road. So it's killing them on the road this season.
All right, you mentioned parity, and it's true. The AFC South is much like the NFC South. I don't know if any of these teams are good. I mean,
Right.
which team in the AFC South to you, and I know you cover the AFC South with the Texans, are any of these teams worthy of being in the playoffs?
No, no, absolutely not. The Titans, every year, the Titans, I just get more respect from Mike Vrabel. I joke goals that if you give him 22 corpses to start the season, he'll go 9-8. I mean, he's just that good of a coach. And so that's what we see. We see Derrick Henry, who they've given like what 100 carries the last. That's not hyperbole. I think he's averaging 25 carries a game the last 4 games, and there's talk the last couple of years. We're going to dial it back. We know he's breaking down. We can't keep one. They don't have anything else, and that's what's so crazy. It's not a great defense, but Mike Vrabel gets every bit of juice out the lemon and gets that defense to play hard for them. They're where they're supposed to be for the most part, and then that offense isn't just enough. And he's got that Steven Jackson to him that when defenses are wore down in the fourth quarter, he really starts to come on. But it's not the same Derrick Henry because they don't have anybody to put the defense on their heels and take them outside of the box. Robert Woods, Traylon Burks got injured. They just don't have weapons, and Tannehill's just doing enough in the passing game, and they're relying on Henry to just win these 50-50 games.
Did Mac Jones get zapped?
They have. Maybe that before this, but watching Mac Jones, and it's kind of funny because if you remember all the articles over the offseason, it was Mac Jones year. So he looks so great. Everything's lined up for him. And then now we're sitting here and you're asking this question if he's got zapped, and he possibly could have because he hasn't played well this year. Some of that's him, and some of that's all the changes and everything they're doing in New England.
All right, let me ask you about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What is up with this team? Is it Todd Bowles? Is it Tom Brady? I mean, why are they bad?
I think it's Tom Brady, and I usually don't talk about people's personal appearance, but it's kind of humorous to me, so I'll throw the joke out there. Kill me if you want to, but Brady, I don't know if he's got a lot, but I don't know if he's friends with Stephen King. You remember the movie Thinner? It really looks, every press conference, it looks like Brady has eaten a slice of Stephen King's pie from Thinner. It doesn't even look like the same guy physically, and it doesn't look like the same guy on the field. Last couple games, they've been relying on him out, just checking down to the running backs, the tight ends underneath, and he has a multitude of weapons. Really been going to Fournette and the rookie Rachaad White a lot. This past week, for some reason, they weren't throwing to Fournette or Rachaad White a lot. The only guy who's really been consistent in the offense is rookie Cade Otton the last couple of weeks, who's consistently, with the injuries at tight end, has stepped up and answered the call. But that's about the only thing that's been consistent with the offense. Brady can't hardly even get a passing touchdown.
Let's say Brady's done. Do they go with Kyle Trask, or do they have to bring in a Matt Ryan type to keep them afloat for another year?
I like Trask when he came out. I thought Trask was in that conversation where I wasn't as high as on Mac Jones as everyone, or Trey Lance for that matter. But I think I had a second on Mac. I had a second on Kyle Trask, Davis Mills a second. All those guys, Davis Mills, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, all of those guys are very similar, that maybe they turn out to be backup NFL quarterbacks, but they have that potential to be a starting caliber quarterback. So the answer, or the question on Kyle Trask, we won't have a better answer for that till next year. But I don't think it'll be Brady as the quarterback for the Bucs next year.
Jason, what is up with Lamar Jackson? I mean, have you seen that when the ball comes into his hands, he's going backwards? It's like he wants to go back 20 yards to make a bigger play, and it's killing him.
What was it? Was it Tecmo Bowl? Was it Tecmo Bowl or 10-yard fight? One of the, I think it's Tecmo Bowl. You could just drop back, and no matter how far you drop back on the goal, backwards behind your line, you could still chunk it 80 yards downfield. And I mean, I think that's kind of the strategy, obviously tongue in cheek there. But when Rashad Bateman got But when he got injured, we started seeing those first 3 weeks, we're talking MVP Lamar. Then Bateman gets banged up. Then Mark Andrews gets banged up. And now we haven't seen Lamar Jackson look like MVP Lamar in that passing game. So they're relying a little bit more on the running game with other backs getting healthy coming back. And while J.K. Dobbins goes down, you got to hate it for that kid. But the one thing I'm looking for, if we're talking fantasy here, for Ravens, if Mark Andrews misses this game, and he's been banged, I've been waiting for this on daily. I'm all over Isaiah Likely. Love the rookie tight. Draft the tight end. It's a 99% chance he's going to be a stud in the NFL, and he's looked good with his chances.
They really have. They have this knack of getting tight ends for sure. Kimmy, speaking of tight ends, do you like this kid, Jelani Woods, who's there with Indianapolis? Because there's a lot of guys. There's Kylan Granson, there's Mo Alley Cox, there's Jelani Woods. Woods caught a couple of touchdowns a few weeks ago. I know he's a big dude. Is he a big talent?
I don't think he's a big talent. I mean, I think in that tight end room, he'll have opportunities, but like the other guys you mentioned as well, they'll take those opportunities as well. There's nobody that's really going to stick out head and shoulder. He has the benefit for being young and then being in that room where he may be the most talented tight end, but if it is, it's not by a large margin. I just think he's got the opportunity with the lack of weapons in that room. And a lot of things we talked about this. Zach Wilson was coming back, like how you couldn't rely on those top, Garrett Wilson and Tyler Conklin to be the same guy and produce the same, because every quarterback has their own identity, chemistry with players and who they go to. And that's what we saw immediately. Garrett Wilson and Tyler Conklin fall off. Corey Davis go back up because that's who Zach Wilson had chemistry with in the past. So it'll be interesting to see who Sam Ellinger's close with. And with him being a younger guy and taking reps farther down the roster, he might have that chemistry with Jelani Woods. So definitely worth monitoring.
Jason, the Texans don't want to pass the ball. Is Brandon Cooks going to get traded? I just wonder why they're not using Mills. They're not using the passing game. Mills played very well at the end of last year. But now it's all of a sudden Lovey's like, you know what? Let's not throw the ball. Let's just run it to Dameon Pierce. And I love Dameon Pierce, but he went from 12 touches week 1 to like 26. It seems like they're running too much and throwing too little.
Well, with the Texans, there's layers to it. So first, I'll start off with Brandon Cooks, and we'll talk about the two tales of the two season inside of the season, I guess. With Brandon Cooks, they have to eat about $8 million in dead money if they trade him, because they just gave him an extension in April. And they love the guy, but he hates losing. He's played with Breeze. He's played with Brett. He's used to playing on winning teams. He's taken the losing bad. He's all, from what Aaron Wilson, my co-host on the Houston Football Show, reports, is that he's all in on the team. If me's just reading the tea leaves, I think if you could trade him to a contender, he'd be in for that. But for the Texans to trade him and eat $8 million in debt and only save $1 million in cap savings, I think they need that late second round pick, somewhere 60 to 64. Contenders pick in the second round, early third round pick. I think it gets it done. On top of the pick, the big thing is freeing up that salary cap space for 2023 and 20. Where the Texans are top 10 and number 1 per over the cap and cap in 2024, top 10 in 2023. To go back to the other side of the Texans, I mean, it's the fourth quarter's been crazy to watch. The Texans have been tied or leading going into the fourth quarter of 5 of these 6 games, and they just fall apart on both sides of the ball. If Cooks gets traded with Nico banged up now, it's probably not going to be a fair assessment on Davis Mills. But that's what the business is. And with the Texans owning the Browns pick, they've got the 2 pick of their own right now and another top 5 pick with the Browns. And they don't look like they're going to win anytime soon this year. So if you've got 2 top 5 picks, you're probably going to have to take that quarterback. Mills over the next 11 games has to prove that he can kick that can down the road and say, hey, give me another year and maybe take that guy in 2024 if you don't think I'm the answer.
All right. You know what the answer is? Jason Braddock is the answer, because the question is, who is one of my favorite guys in the world and in this fantasy industry? It is you, my friend.
Always great to be on with you. Hope you're feeling good. Tell the family I said hey.
Okay, appreciate you. All right, we'll catch Jason next week, same time as always. But let's take a look right now at my first vibe into week 8. You know how we do this. Ravens and Buccaneers. What am I looking at? I'm looking to see this quarterback situation. Lamar and Brady. Lamar was a guy that I was in on round 6 of a lot of leagues. And I was looking great. And now I'm not looking great the last 3 weeks. And it's Lamar. I'm blaming you, Lamar. The visionary rosters needed you to step up. Let's go. Giants and Seahawks. Can the Giants go on the road? And can Saquon continue his good play versus Geno without DK Metcalf? I think the Seahawks might be in a little bit of trouble here. Broncos, Jaguars. Ooh, hide the women and children on that one. Can Travis Etienne do well against the Broncos defense? Watching that. Panthers, Falcons. I will try not to watch that game at all, but you know the Falcons are 3-4, and I will say this: I'm watching Tyler Algier, and I'm watching to see when Desmond Ridder will get out there. I want to see it. Bears, Cowboys. The Bears opened up their offense against the Patriots. If they want to have any chance to beat the Cowboys, they better do the same. You know, can Justin Fields continue to sling it? I don't think so. I want to see more Khalil Herbert. The more Khalil Herbert, the better. For the Cowboys, can Dak, continue to improve? Because that offense was not very good last week. Dolphins, Lions. I am looking to see Mostert, Tua. Can the Dolphins go on the road and win a big game there? They're going to have to do that. The Lions, I want to see if Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's playing. If they're all playing, the Lions have a shot. Okay. Cardinals, Vikings. The Vikings are 5-1, but they're a tepid 5-1. Justin Jefferson, I need him to step up. Kirk Cousins. They always play better at home. I like the Vikings at home, but the Cardinals, DeAndre Hopkins, is Patrick Peterson going to cover him? No way. Raiders and Saints. Oh, man. Josh Jacobs. What's going on there? For the Saints, who's the quarterback? More interested in that. Patriots, Jets. Speaking of who the quarterback is it Zapp? Is it Mac Jones? How good is Ramondre Stevenson? Give him the football. For the Jets, Michael Carter, James Robinson. How does it work out? Zach Wilson, can he throw the ball downfield? Steelers, Eagles. Eagles get a bye week. They were hot. Can they continue that streak? Can they beat the Steelers at home? I think so. Kenny Pickett, is he going to struggle against the Eagles' attack defense? I think he will mightily. Titans, Texans. Looking at that one as well, especially, as Brandon Cooks going to have a big game. Commanders, Colts. Jonathan Taylor, what are you doing for me, my friend? 49ers, Rams. Can Allen Robinson get in the end zone? Of course, Christian McCaffrey. Packers, Bills. We're watching that one carefully. And the Bengals and Browns. But want to thank everybody. I want to thank Tyler and Anthony for their great job tonight. Appreciate them. I want to thank my guests, Dr. Jesse Morse and Jason Braddock. But right now, it's time to put away the insurance cards, put away the copay. The office is closed, my friends. All right. So I'll be back on Friday night from 10 p.m. to midnight, and we'll be going over the games more in depth and try to break it down so that you can win in week 8. All right. Check me out at drroto.com. We're going to do our best to help you get to a fantasy championship. All right. This is Dr. Roto saying be well. Take care.